Sons and daughters of the living God, happy Sabbath. I had the privilege of growing up in the beautiful nation of Papua New Guinea. One weekend, our family, my parents there serving as missionaries, went to visit another family in the highlands. On the way there, I began to feel sick. When we got to their place, you do what you do with a sick kid. I was placed on the couch in front of the television. The problem is in my house, I hadn't grown up with Disney. But in this house, they had Disney, and they put Dumbo on. The fever began to increase, and I was becoming delirious when the dancing pink elephants scene came on. I have it on the screens for you. If you haven't seen it, don't watch it. It's a terrifying piece of television. But for a 4-year-old kid already experiencing a feverish break with reality, that was too much. I was on the couch there. The mother of the household that we were visiting, she came, she could see something was wrong. I didn't have language to express what I was going through. They could see that my fever was getting dangerous. So Mum and her, they took me to the local Adventist clinic. And I still remember it so clearly. This little brick building deep in the bush, in the jungle, miles from anywhere, and a line of people just waiting to get in. We took our place in line, and when we went in there, staffed by people from Papua New Guinea largely, they just received me with such love and affection. I just knew everything was going to be okay. They gave me a shot. Mum held me through the night while the fever subsided. The nightmares from the elephants continued for years, though. Dr. Hart began our series with a beautiful and a compassionate sermon about who Jesus would heal if Jesus were here today. Nicole, last week in her preaching debut, I am so proud of her, spoke beautifully about how Jesus healed. Today, my question is this: how do we become the people who heal like Jesus? How do we become the people who staff that clinic and serve so selflessly? What are the theological positions or tools we need to live and to teach like Jesus? Last week, we were at the pool of Bethesda. Today, I want to invite you to travel forward from that moment 200 years in time. In fair Tunisia, we lay our scene. Carthage is the ancient city. There beside the Mediterranean waters beautiful and blue, but the North African coastline dry, desolate, hot. The heat in Carthage made things happen slowly. The wind, when it would stir up, would fill the air with dust. When the rain fell, everything would turn to mud. It was a slow, subsistent life. When a young girl turns to her mother, she says, "Mum, I think the rats are acting differently." The rats? "Yeah, I think they're moving slower." "What do you mean?" "Well, there goes one now." A rat crawls to the middle of the Roman road and then falls over. The fluids of life come out of the body. Rats don't usually die like that. A bird comes down to inspect what should be a snack, taps at it and flies away. The mother and daughter look at each other. For the rest of the day in the market, they continue to watch this rat there. No cats, no dogs, nothing touches it. It's a bad omen, they're scared. The next morning when they wake up and walk to their shop early in the morning, there's another 13 rats scattered around in the same position. The plague of Cyprian, as it's called, because Cyprian was the one who documented it, broke out upon the city there in Carthage, destroyed the population. We don't know exactly what it was. Zoonotic in origin is the best guess. That is, it made the transverse from animals to humans for the first time, but it began to rip through the Roman Empire. The city of Alexandria, just across the waters, at the beginning of the plague, 520,000, at the end, 190,000 people. In Carthage, 30 to 50% of the entire population disappeared. In Rome, at the height of this plague, 5,000 per day were dying. Society is falling apart. People are panicking. And in that small city there of Carthage is a group of Christians. And they are wondering how they should respond in this situation. How should they live and teach and serve like Jesus in this moment? And to them comes a letter from their bishop, Cyprian. The bishop, Cyprian, he's the overseer of a few churches and a few pastors. Today it would be like the conference president writing us a letter. And he writes to this small group in Carthage, and he uses the words of 1 Peter to guide them through this hell that they are living in. 1 Peter 4, verse 12. He begins with this: "Dear friends, do not be surprised at this fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." Cyprian goes on to say to the church, "Listen, I know some of you are surprised that you are suffering in equal numbers as others. But isn't that what we would expect if we share creation with everyone?" And so today, church, I want to begin with this. Do not be surprised at suffering as if it were something strange. But we as Christians, we do get surprised at suffering, don't we? Have you ever seen an Adventist get sick? It's quite entertaining. I did all the correct things. I did everything right. I ate the quinoa. I went for a walk in the morning. I rested on Sabbath. I did everything correctly. But this is Christian maturity. Christian maturity is realizing that in this life you can do everything right and still suffer because we live in this fallen world. I think the best illustration of this comes from one of my favorite movies, a beautiful work of art, Princess Bride. Life is pain, Highness. And anybody who tries to tell you differently is selling something. It's good teaching. Christianity is not trying to sell us anything. We live in this fallen world. Do not be surprised. And it's important to recognize, because so often what happens is when we encounter suffering in ourselves, but mostly in other people, what happens is we tend to moralize it, don't we? Time and time again, Jesus found this with his very own disciples. They're walking up to a situation. Jesus is about to heal it, and the disciples are all like, "Just a moment, Jesus, did this person earn their own suffering? Should we maybe not intervene and let them keep going? Like maybe... Is this the will of God that they be, should we not? But Jesus, time and time again, he says, listen, that's not how this works. When we encounter suffering, we are not surprised by it, we simply solve it. That's what we do. We don't moralize or theologize, we solve it in as much as we can. And so the bishop begins with these words of Peter to this church. Do not be surprised at suffering. Life will make you suffer. But then he goes on, and this is when it gets incredible. 1 Peter 4:13. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ. This is a plague. This is hell. Rejoice. These are her exact words. We have the quote. This plague, he says, Cyprian, is a great opportunity because it allows us to prove our faith. How incredible it is for our soul that we can, with an unshaken, stable, confident mind, struggle against all of this devastation and death. How sublime it is to stand tall amid this sad sickness and desolation, instead of lying down and giving up like those who have no hope in God do. Instead, we rejoice and embrace the benefits of this situation that allows us to show our faith and suffer in service. Audacious. We go towards Christ and we walk the narrow way that he walked with him in suffering, that we might be rewarded by having the chance to live like Jesus, receiving his life and his faith. It's a brave thing to say, isn't it? The first thing he says to this small congregation: we do not celebrate suffering. Suffering is still recognized for the horror that it is. But in this moment, first of all, there might be an opportunity that you should not miss to show your faith. Let me put it this way. Church, in a world today that is being torn apart along racial lines, what an opportunity to show our faith and come together as an incredibly, beautifully, ethnically diverse church. I want to talk about this carefully. We as the Adventist Church, we still have much work to do when it comes to race and relationships. But I was also proud when a few years ago the Pew Research Center discovered that the most ethnically diverse church in North America is the Adventist Church. I was proud of that. The figures are up behind us. Church, in a world that is tearing itself apart along political lines, what an opportunity to demonstrate our faith and come together and say we are not a one-party church. We come together from all sorts of political perspectives, but we come together and we sing together and we love each other because we follow Jesus. In a world where inflation is running rife, when family budgets are tight, what an opportunity to say we will continue to be the people who continually give to the charities around the world that we believe in. What an opportunity to demonstrate our faith, despite the price of eggs and insurance. Or maybe personally, you've been to the doctor and you've sat there, you've had that appointment. And the doctor said your life isn't going to look like what you thought it was going to look like. Or perhaps you've lost somebody. A family member has passed away. You mourn. You do, but you demonstrate your faith in the fact that you do not mourn like unbelievers. Sorrow and suffering is recognized for what it is, but firstly, he says there is an opportunity in it to demonstrate your faith. But then secondly, he says, this is also your chance to suffer like Jesus. Congratulations. Jesus came to this world. He called himself the suffering servant. Jesus alleviated our suffering, and in that act took suffering upon himself. Church, in this world, I promise you, there are still so many occasions and so many opportunities where people are suffering, and the only way to alleviate their suffering is to take their suffering upon yourself. And Cyprian says, praise God, because this is your opportunity to experience closeness with Jesus as you suffer like him. What a courageous letter to write. I love our church spiritual disciplines that we talk about so frequently. I do. I love Sabbath. It's delightful. It's lovely. I love prayer. I love unloading my soul to God. It's a beautiful thing to do. I love our disciplines of fellowship and hospitality. I love eating food with you all. It's so good. But Cyprian and Peter say this: listen, if you want to feel really close to Jesus, find a place in this world that is suffering and alleviate their suffering and walk the narrow path that Jesus walked. This plague is your opportunity. But why? Why can you be that sort of person who does that? Peter answers it, and so does Cyprian. Because you will be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. Check out Cyprian preaching on this. It's so good. This little church, being oppressed for their faith, persecuted, wars, famines, pestilence, they believe it is the end of the times. Rightfully so. Cyprian writes this: you ought to know and believe and hold it for certain that the day of affliction has begun to hang over our heads at the end of the world, and that the time of the Antichrist is about to draw near. But check out him preaching. But after him comes Christ. It's good teaching. You're worried about the Antichrist? Don't worry, because we know what comes next. After the Antichrist comes Christ. Let me illustrate it to you this way. There were two twins in the womb. One twin turned to the other and said, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" I do. What do you think it will be like? Well, I don't know, but I guess we might be able to use these legs of ours. We might eat through our mouths. These eyes, these senses that we have. Maybe the world will be brighter and more beautiful than we could ever imagine in here. Do you really believe in life after delivery? We can see our umbilical cords, they're too short, and no one's ever come back. Thank God. Yeah, I do. And I don't know exactly what it will be like, and I can't exactly explain it, but I think Mother will take care of us. You believe. You believe in Mother? Yeah, I do. I think she's the one in which we live and move and have our being. I think if you are really careful and really still, you can still hear her heartbeat traveling through all of reality. If you listen really carefully, her voice still speaks. But listen, this womb, it's getting smaller, it's getting tighter, the contractions are getting worse. I know. And eventually labor begins. One twin, there's nothing else after this. That's it. This is the end. This is all that we were ever going to experience. The other twin, I think I know what's coming next. It's okay. I think I know what's about to happen. One twin despairing, the other, we're about to meet Mother. I apologize, father of two kids. This childbirth is incredible. That moment after, two twins held face to face with their mother. It was better than we could ever thought it would be, they say to each other. We as Christians, we get to live a different life in this world because we know what is coming next. So what did the early Christians do with this? We have some quotes they did very, very well. Dionysius of Alexandria. He writes this: Christians during this time were unsparing in their exceeding love and kindness. They held fast to each other. They visited the sick fearlessly. They ministered to them, continually serving them in Christ, and they died with them. Joyfully they took their affliction of others. They drew the sickness from their neighbors to themselves, and they willingly received their pains. Many who cared for the sick and gave their strength to others died, having transferred the death of others to themselves. But With the pagans, everything was quite otherwise. They deserted those who began to be sick. They fled from their dearest friends. They cast them out into the streets when they were half dead, and they left the dead like refuse. They didn't have the theological tools. We have more information about what occurred. Dr. Doolittle, I love the name, from Yale, historian. Before the Antonine plagues, the Christian population in Rome was less than 1%. After the Cyprian plague, where Christians died equally of this pestilence, because of their example, they were suddenly 10%. And then by the middle of the 4th century, they were well over half. One other piece of information that talks about how the Christians did in this moment, and I find very entertaining, is from Emperor Julian. We have his relief on a coin here. He sends a letter to the priests, the pagan priests of Rome. And most of this letter is him simply saying, can you please just be a little more like the Christians? Because our Roman pantheon is fading away, everyone's turning to Christ. The funniest thing I find is the conclusion of the letter, and Emperor Julian says this: "For it is disgraceful that when no Jew has ever had to beg, and the impious Galileans," that's his slanderous term for the Christians, "the impious Galileans support not only their own poor, but ours as well. All people are seeing the lack of aid from us." That is how they responded. But we have more information. A few years later, Basil of Caesarea, a man of great wealth and great talent, saw the ability to alleviate suffering through this Christian approach. And he said, I can scale this up. He employed all of the best doctors, he found nurses, he bought the best of Roman and Greek medicine, and he purchased a facility and funded it himself and created in history the very first public hospital. A poorhouse, he called it, and a place of healing. People flocked in. They loved it. It was so immensely popular that a few years later, Fabiola of Rome, she was one of the 7 founding families of Rome. She herself was again immensely wealthy. She was married to a man who had wealth as well. He was abusive. He passed away. She took the opportunity, sold everything she had, and set up a public hospital in Rome for all. She would go and minister to the patients there herself. She was so well loved by Rome. There were 2 great turnouts for the people of Rome to celebrate 2 events. The first one was when General Pompeo returned from victory 200 years earlier, and the second greatest festival and event in Rome was the celebration of Fabiola of Rome when she passed away. And throughout history, this teaching, this life, this healing of Christ has continued to sweep across the globe. So what do we do as Christians today? First of all, we will not be surprised when we encounter suffering. We won't be. We won't moralize it. We will simply do our best to solve it. And in your life, you will see examples of large suffering and small suffering. Do what you can to solve it. Secondly, when these things occur, we will take this opportunity to demonstrate our faith, and we will willingly enter in to suffer like Jesus, because Jesus walked in that way, and we as the students will not be greater than the teacher. We will follow his methods. Why? Because we know what is coming next. I know what you were all worried about. This brings us to the end of our series. The youth pastor is doing a series on the health message. I know you were all worried that I was going to have you doing squats during the song service. That this was going to be my opportunity to launch my career as a fitness influencer. At the conclusion of all these things, I'll sell you my own personal program where you can have the body that you want for only $400 a week. That'd be so sad, wouldn't it? Instead, I want to finish it this way, with a quote from the late, great Timothy Keller. He was speaking to a woman who was serving. It was a community that just desperately needed help. She was pouring herself out in service. It was hard. She was suffering. And Timothy Keller went to her. And he said, listen, why do you do this? Isn't it hard? And her response was simply this. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I suffer. But it's nothing that the resurrection cannot fix. We will go forward with our faith and we'll be the people that Jesus called us to be.